I think we're ready to get started. We have a pretty packed agenda, so I don't want to start late. My name is Jeff Lumpkin. I'm on the Power BI team at Microsoft. I've been on the team about 3 months. Prior to that, I'd had about 15 years in finance at Microsoft. So the purpose of this newly formed team is to work directly with customers and help them using their data to see the value of Power BI. The reason why I and my other team members are on this team is we just developed a passion for using BI in our everyday jobs and wanted to carry that forward to a full-time career. So next to me is Christian Berg. He's also a former Microsoft finance guy. Next to him, Serena Stevens. She is an industrial designer and an MCS consultant. And then on the far right is John Kim, whose previous role I will let him explain to you. But he's also not a technician. He is more of an analyst. What we're going to show you today is how we approach building effective dashboards and effective Power BI analytics. It's based on our experience of doing this on a daily basis. We have very definite ideas, but we look forward to hearing from you during the question and answer period about your own ideas, interpretations of what we've shown you. So I think that a dashboard is just a platform to tell a story. And one of the things that we've worked very hard at Microsoft Finance to do is to teach finance employees to tell stories with data and to go into a meeting or a business review with an idea that they want to make an impression regarding 3 to 5 points. So 3 to 5 actions that an executive or a business partner can understand and walk away from and want to take action on, be motivated to take action on. And this doesn't come from having a 75-page PowerPoint deck where after the 6th page, people start to fall asleep. It's from having interactive data that reveals truths about the business. And the role then of the finance person or the analyst is to use the tool in such a way as to reveal truth to business partners, to suggest changes or improvements that the business can make to drive revenue, increase profitability, attract and retain customers, spread adoption of product into new markets. It's those business goals which are supported by an effective structure of data, a well-built visualization tool, and a strong analyst who can tell a compelling story. So I've been talking to a lot of people here at this conference, been in a lot of these meetings, and I think what I'm showing up here is conceptually quite understandable to a lot of people. Is the big work in producing good data visualization is all the work that goes on underneath to get the data together in the first place, to put it into a place where it's accessible, where it can be used effectively, retrieved effectively, and in a way that's not too challenging for an analyst. Because, I made a point about the fact that we're not technologists up here. We're not engineers. We're analysts. We're users. And so for us, we're not great at putting data together. We're not great at constructing a back end. We really don't know how to do that. What we're really good at is once the data is there, to build it up to tell a story with it. And so we rely on partners, on other people in other roles at Microsoft to do this big part of the underneath pyramid. And then that allows us, it gives us the basic platform on which to build analytics. We still spend a lot of time cleaning data or cleansing data. So for example, much of our work involves getting a data set from a customer, say in a CSV file or in a SQL backup file, taking that data and understanding what it is, and then building a visualization. So we do a lot of data shaping, but at a very kind of low level, not an enterprise level. The enterprise level work is the really tough work and comprises the bulk of this pyramid. So we think about combining these 3 circles to get to effective data communication and effective data storytelling. One is the data, the second is the visualizations, which support or reveal the data, and then the third is the narrative that one develops around the data. And I think Christian is going to pull that out, especially when he comes on stage. But it's the combination of these 3, and then it's knowing all 3 at a very deep level that the analyst works to attain. So I need to know my business. I need to know the data which is coming from the business. And then I need to pivot that data or play with the data so that I know the story. And then finally, I need to tell the story in such a way that people really remember it and are emotionally motivated by what I tell them. Because you know, everything we do in life can come down to telling a story, right? Talking about your weekend when you get to work, telling your kids what you did that day at work, having your kids, coaxing them to tell you what you did. If you're on a date with someone, you're telling a story about your life and who you are, right? Storytelling comes in every facet of life, but I think too often we forget that in business, storytelling is also a key component of what we should be doing. So this is what we're working for. John?
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. So my name is John Kim from Microsoft Power BI team. So I've been working on building Power BI dashboard for our CEO, Satya Nadella, and SLT member. Also, external customer like a school district or government in the Middle East, etc. And today I'd like to share our own story of building Power BI dashboard. So 1.5 years ago, my team tried to use advanced analytics to understand Microsoft service and product ecosystem. And then our former chief strategy officer told us, when you don't feel well, when you go hospital, your doctor wouldn't start with MRI. They probably were checking your heart rate, blood pressure, basic stuff. So we tried to see what would be the key indicator to understand our own business. So we're following the 4 measures. One is user acquisitions, like a surface, new activations, new license. And second is user engagement or usage, monthly active user, daily active user, and monetization, which is revenue, and the market share. If you think about it, if you're just tracking revenue, and then your service actually usage is low, year after, like your customer wouldn't renew your service. Or if your service is up, revenue is up, more users actually coming, but what if your market share is 3%? So to start with a 4 measure, and then we try to contact 10 core Microsoft business, Windows, Azure, Dynamics, Office 365. And some of the data actually from engineering team, some of the data from finance team, some data actually in a very good semantic model like Online Services Cube, some data actually in a CSV file. Definition for monthly active user different, like Outlook, new user, monthly active user, and the Bing users are different. So we have to actually go through process to getting the data, acquire data, clean the data, build a data model, build a visualization on top of that, and getting feedback, and iterate. And we use Power BI. So to give you a better idea, so I create a sample dashboard for South Korea government, just an example. You can think about we as Microsoft, Windows, Azure, Dynamic. If you own consumer product, hair product, baby product, and try to think about, what will be the top 4 measure. So my colleague Christian will talk about from data to insight, insight to story, and we're going to come back to this dashboard and talk about more. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so like John said, it starts with the question. What is the question that I'm trying to answer? The next step is to start exploring the data. When you start looking at the data, I find it very helpful to, especially when I'm exploring data that I haven't seen before, to, in my mind, think about, of the columns and the data available, which of these are categories? And I think of the categories, that's what you want to split your measure on. Because it's interesting, like a number has very little meaning without putting in relation to something else. So for instance, when we analyze our own business, when we do our business reviews, we think of our categories as the product hierarchy, or the geography, which goes from maybe a high-level classification to continents, all the way down to individual sales locations. And then the measures, of course. And I like to make that explicit, so often when I explore this, I would hide the columns that contain the facts, and I'll create explicit measures. If I don't have an assumption about what I want to use it for, I'll do something very simple, just summing that column. But that makes it very clear and helps the self-service when someone who's also not familiar with that data set tries to do analysis on it. In a second step, I try to analyze the numbers in different ways. And I think here it's important to not have too much of an hypothesis about what the insights will be, to have an open mind and look for truly interesting things that you wouldn't expect in the data. There are many different ways to do this, and here it becomes very helpful if you have that clear idea about which are the relevant categories that you want to split your data on. And there are lots of interesting things that can pop out from simple charts, even when exploring data that you haven't seen before. So classical thing, like if you try different legends on your visualization, do patterns emerge? Do you see trends over time? Are there significant differences between comparables? So within one category, do they behave very differently? Are there outliers? These are obvious, it depends a lot on like which dimensions you cut it on, but do you find anything that really stands out? Do we have some oddballs here? And also this can be very helpful, like if you're trying to rethink how you classify your business, or if you have the right hierarchies for any of these categories. And then the third step, I try to build like the basic reports that give you, the answers to 90% of the questions that you would expect from the business, given your current types of business review discussions. And the most common of these is that you try to get all the relevant categories in on one visualization, and you show all of them for a single measure. And I'll show you an example of this where we look at variance to budget, which is really our variance to expectation for a couple of businesses in Microsoft. Another example is when you take a single category and you look at all the measures. And this is when you're trying to give a 360, say for a P&L owner who's trying to understand his particular business unit. Now, some benchmarking might still be interesting, but most importantly, he wants to understand how all these different measures come together and how the sensitivities of his business equation impact his business, how it impacted it yesterday and how it's expected to impact it going forward. So if we show an example, so a popular or common type of analysis that we do at Microsoft is a sales dashboard business review. Thank you. Where we would try to benchmark the different areas against one another. This was very relevant when we at least defined our market as PCs, because at that time we didn't have many analogies. There weren't many other companies that we could benchmark against. So we became experts at internal benchmarking. So then the question was, how do you make these stories salient? How do you make these messages salient? And how do you get the business leaders to immediately throughout the meeting work towards a single action and discuss the counterfactuals of the data? So here's an example where we're analyzing the revenue here, the actual by country for a subset of Western Europe, versus the expected performance of these. So this was finance expectation on capacity or potential. It's a fairly busy slide. There's a lot going on here, but it is easily interpretable because we're staying to a single measure. So despite all these different categories, right? So we have geography, we have time, visualized here by quarter. We have the pricing level, which is the type of sales contract under which it was sold. We think of this as a way to differentiate between leading versus trailing indicators in our business. And of course, the product hierarchy. So if we now look at an example here, for instance, we see that in the waterfall here, Ireland was by far the best performer versus its expected performance, or its expected potential. And if we select that, one thing immediately jumps out. Well, two things actually. One is that despite, on average, Q4 is by far the most important quarter, it is lagging for Ireland. The other thing that jumps out is that the new business is underperforming, and the overage against potential really happened in the other two categories, which are more trailing. And we've then designed this report so that you can then follow the new business by drilling into it to understand what's going on. So we can now drill into new business and look at it by quarter, select Q4, and see exactly how poor that performance was for Ireland. But that also gives us another insight, which we didn't see immediately, which was that Denmark was also underperforming in this quarter. Denmark was, if we jump back out, was the highest, is the largest country by revenue for this subset. So that's important. And we can now drill in further to see which of these countries had what overage or underage by product. Really get the message and understand what's going on and what actions do we need to take on this subset. John?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. So let's talk more about dashboard. So let's say you actually executive decision maker. And this is a dashboard for one of our government, South Korea. Each tile, the background image actually showing the trend. Okay. And then we are able to set target or goal. So based on the target or goal, we show the status with the color: green, yellow, red. Okay? So just by looking at the dashboard, one thing you can just find, there are 3 measures actually with the red color. So naturally, you want to take a look into that, right? Another thing you can find is, for example, justice. They're all green color. However, they're all downturn. So right now, they're okay, but it might be go bad. So we can use as an entry view, and then user actually able to drill down. Before actually we drill down, I just want to mention that this tile can be resized, reallocate. So if you think that energy is more important, and then you can just move the energy to left and right, it's customizable. Let me click one of that. Taking some time, loading. So always we try to show what this report about. So in this case, universal industry collaboration. Some case is very helpful to actually adding the definition. And the scale is 1 to 7. 7 is the best. And let's say, just looking at top, South Korea, it's a good idea to actually adding 2 more countries to compare, which is China and Japan. And then OECD and G20 and worldwide, okay? So without even looking at the detail, we have some idea about where they are, how other countries are actually doing. And another thing is, even though this report is about universal industry collaboration, but it's also a good idea to actually adding another measure, supplementary measure. In this case, available scientist, engineer, and see how they correlate each other. Talking about the scatter chart, there are many different countries here. First, the target country, South Korea, can be found based on dashed line. So actually, if you click on that country, your line chart will be filtered, okay? And in this case, university collaboration actually very steady. However, the available scientists and engineer actually is not going well. Another way to use a scatter chart is try to find any outlier or anything we need to pay attention to. So in this case, there's one country actually moving really fast, which is Qatar. And they actually significantly improve on university and industry collaboration. By the way, this is actually public data from World Bank, so nothing confidential. But actually, I manipulate the data so that please don't make decision on this, okay? So let me actually go back to the main dashboard. So this is your view. It's good, countrywide view, 360 view, but you will always have some challenge or some issue to try to solve on. So in this case, you might want to actually lead to another dashboard. So in this case, let's say you're interested in energy, oil price. We'll use this tile as an entry point. So when you click this one, it will actually lead to another dashboard. It's kind of slow. I open up, okay, let me switch that. It's supposed to actually open this dashboard. And then you can talk about more deeper issue. Like in this case, oil production, consumptions, which group actually producing more oil, what's the price, shale gas. All your experts actually put in all your knowledge in here, but not necessarily into the countrywide dashboard. So we as a Microsoft, we have one dashboard, it's top 20 key measure, and that dashboard can lead to our Windows business, cloud business, Office business. From there, they can go detail. Device business, they can go to Surface, Xbox, phone, and each dashboard, the domain expert actually build their own dashboard. Think about it. All your work, they can share the data. They can make a decision based on data. That would be beautiful. So my colleague Sarina will talk more about custom visual representation. And then let me pass that to her.
Okay, so I hope this works. Can you hear me? No? Oh, yes. Maybe like this? Okay. So I actually wanted to show you some examples of what you would do when you design a dashboard. What I always think about is when I start to design something, and I'll just go to one of the next slides. Is first, who is your audience? It can be you are designing for your business analyst, or maybe it's your CEO or the readers of your blog. You can have a lot of different audiences, and they will interact with your visuals and the data you present in a very different way. When you, for instance, management or that kind of people might just want to have one quick overview. They don't want to have to select things themselves. They just want to know what's happening right now, and then they'll move on. While an analyst might want to drill down and see what's behind the thing that you are presenting. So who is your audience? What do you want them to discover? And then what action do you want them to take on that discovery? And once you have that, the idea of that, you can start sort of adding the components and start to visualize and create your report. So this is one example of a dashboard you could make. There's a lot of information here, and of course you have probably a nice picture of your organization or something of the product or a graphic or an image, but it's not very necessary to show that in every opportunity you have. So sometimes it's better to just leave things out and keep it as simple as possible. Also, you can see here, for instance, the count of incidents. That's really on the right corner, upper corner. That's maybe something that you want really to pop out and people to see at first sight. But now it's sort of stuck away. And you can also see there's a year filter here, but probably people start reading from left to right. They see all these colors popping up, and by the time they get to the filter, they probably have lost some crucial seconds just all looking at this chaos. So what you can do is really see this, look at this canvas as what you would when you're reading a book from left to right. You want to have the most important information, maybe one call out in the upper left corner. You will have the filters, and I'm not saying this is perfect, but this is just like some simple adjustments that you can make it more easy to understand. So the filters are placed in top, where people first see the most, or the topic. So what is it about? What is the interaction that I can have with this page? I can look at different years. And then you have just three sort of columns with information where they can look through. No additional images. I would probably even leave the logo out because, well, probably it's on a website or something else where you already have something recognizable of that kind. So that's really a couple of things that you can just keep it simple. And also when you're doing the analysis and creating the report, you will go through a lot of data and a lot of information, and it's actually key for you to decide what you should leave out and what is important to the end user. Of course, you will come across a lot of interesting things, but it's especially important to also think about what you might have found, but what is not key for the end user or for your audience to understand as well. Let me see. I'll have one more example of a web interface. So this was really an example of a dashboard. What we have here is a report that's published to web. And I can see if I can zoom in. No, I don't know how to do that. So this is a non-profit organization that published some of the information about their projects and the success of their projects on their website. So this is a way different audience that you want to address than having a report on your revenue or on other things in your organization. So again, just going from left to right, having some main information pop up as the first thing you see, and then some more explanation once you go over to the right. And people can also interact with it. There's a small explanation on what this actually means, and it gives a way for people to interact, but also to you give them the information you want them to see. So you don't overcomplicate it for them. So it's nice to interact, but it's not that they will have to do the whole analysis themselves. It's more a playful way of representing data. So I think Jeff will have some other examples.
With the exception of Serena, we all sit together, and Serena flies in from Netherlands once a quarter and spends a week to 2 weeks with us. So we all sit in the same room, and I can sit and watch everyone working, and it's really fascinating for me to watch the 3 different approaches that these people take, and I have my own approach. Serena, in my view, is very focused on simplicity, on color, and producing a holistic whole. John spends hours formatting and arranging things. And so you saw when he had his World Bank data and the North Korea dashboard, he is incredibly meticulous about putting things in a logical order. So down by columns according to subject, then linking from one of those tiles into a deeper dashboard. But again, he's incredibly focused on that secondary dashboard on arranging things in a particular way. Christian is a complicated guy. And Christian likes to be able to go quickly up and down. And so he works a lot on putting together visualizations which are highly interactive and highly interrelated. That means he focuses a lot on data model. And I confess, I think I'm I'm not quite as smart as Christian, but I also have that same bent of thinking a lot about the data model and how do I get a lot of flexibility into what I'm looking at. So I developed some rules about dashboard guidelines where I tried to draw from what each of what we do. And so I just like to talk through them quickly. And the first of these is start with the end. So what is it that you're trying to produce at the end point? And then what does it take to get to that end point? So what data do I need? How do I need to bring in different fact tables and join them? What dimensions are going to be really important for me when it comes to producing good data? Think critically. The example Serena showed, the police data with the busy background, we actually, on our partner showcase, we have 40 or 50 partners who submit files to us, and this team, we review them, and we make changes to them, and then send them back to the partner for improvements. And some of the changes are cosmetic in nature. I mean, you don't put a picture that overwhelms the data. But some of them, it's clear that whoever built the file wasn't thinking critically about what they were doing. So for instance, there's one I show where you have deliveries that are on time and deliveries that are on late as whole numbers. And then there's a calculation at the row level of percentage late and percentage on time over 16 months. So there was one visualization where they had the percentage late stacked on top of the percentage on time by the 12 months of the year. What that meant is that 4 of the months stacked to 200% and 8 of the months stacked to 100%. And there was not critical thinking about what they were trying to show. Had there been, they would have chosen a different way of displaying that data. You lose credibility instantly if you go in front of a business partner and have something like that. So a lot of this is protecting your own image as an analyst, but 2, being able to deliver business value. Delivering 200% is not delivering business value. Match the graphic to the data. So Serena pulled out that one example of the circle graph. That is not a good match of the graphic to the data. There are much better ways to do that. Simpler is better. The inclination of us all, me included, is to put as much as you can onto that page and try and project as much. A lot of times, the simple truth that you're trying to transmit is lost if there's too much on that page. Hang on. No, the other one. Sorry about that. Be consistent with the types of colors, graphics that you're using, so that the palette is pleasing to you. Think about a painting, constructing a painting. That's essentially what it is you have a palette of a canvas, and you're trying to produce something that's pleasing to the eye. I don't know if you've seen the Edit Interactions button. That's an incredibly useful button for making sure that as you pivot through data, your displays remain constant and understandable. And then finally, formatting drives understanding. So instead of having, I think we're good. Instead of having a decimal point with 10 numbers after the decimal point, change that. So there are no decimal points. If you're showing billions of dollars, change it so you're transmitting billions of dollars or millions as opposed to whole numbers. Make sure to put a comma in. That it sounds trivial, but not doing that puts up a barrier to understanding. And the goal is to facilitate, to drive deep understanding among your audience. So that's why I see all of this team spending a ton of time thinking about what is the visual impact of what they're doing, and how do they make it as comprehensible, as easily accessible as possible. And I learn lessons from them every time I watch them. Think about it yourself. Is what have you seen before that works really well? Can you emulate that? I have one more example that I'd like to show you, but I can take questions at this point. Is there any questions based on what we've done so far? Okay. So what I'm going to show you is a real data source. It's point of sale data from 120 retail locations across 3 months with 180 SKUs. And so I've changed the data, disguised it from the real data source. But it actually is a really valuable lesson in understanding how to make visualizations work. So what we have is, I've tried to cut this page by as many time dimensions as possible. So you can see that in the top middle, we have sales by day, and two things are visible here right away. The first is that there's a huge spike on August 11th. Okay? The second thing is that there's this big drop-off in October. The upper right visualization has sales by, or quantity sold by month, August, September, October. Lower left is sales of quantity, or quantity sold by day. So you see that Friday is the biggest, Tuesday is the second biggest. Sales by hour of the day. When people start going to work at 6 o'clock, that's when sales really pick up. There's a big peak at 12 o'clock, lunchtime, and then a steady rise. You know, this line rises steadily till the 5 to 6 o'clock hour when people go home. And then finally, here is a view of sales by region, East, Metro, and West. So I like this. This is exactly what Christian referred to is one category, time, looked at from a wide variety of perspectives. And it's revealing a lot. So let me tell you my interpretation of what we're seeing here. September is the biggest month by far. August is second biggest. October is the third biggest. In this example, I'm using beer and wine sales in the state of Washington. So my theory is that about this, August, people are on vacation. They're not here to buy. They come back, Labor Day, big holiday. So people are celebrating, buying a lot of consumables, and then October, things fall off as we move into winter. Now, sales by day of the week, Friday's the biggest day because people get paid on Friday. So on Friday, they have cash in their hand, and they're ready to go. So they may go buy beer and wine for the weekend. By the time they get to Tuesday, they've consumed all that, and they need to buy more. Okay? So then Tuesday's the big day. Now, lunch hour. Well, 6, guys getting up at 6 need a beer before they get to work. That could be it. And then we get out to midday, and so everyone's going out of lunch, buying up for the evening ahead. This steady increase till 5 to 6, and then people get home and they don't go out anymore. So I think this is from lunch, being free on the lunch hour, and this is getting out of work and then going home. And then finally, this is the by region view, so by day and by region. And here's what I see, is that exactly the same pattern exists for all three with one exception, and that exception is Tuesday. And on Tuesday in the metro area, there's this big spike in purchase of beer and wine. Why is that? If we brought in demographic data for the state of Washington, we would see that incomes are much higher in the metro area. So this is going from Everett to Seattle to Tacoma to Olympia. Incomes are much higher, which means that people have more ready cash during the week to make purchases. And so my theory is that while the East and West, very rural areas, there's not that much free cash, so they have to wait till Friday when they get paid in order to make these purchases. This is what I think. So what I want to do now is talk about, I want to drill in and I want to understand this spike on August 11th. So I'm going to come here and I'll blow this up and then enable the drill down. So now we're going to drill into August, and we get to the week ending August 15th. We get to the day, August 11th, so here's the big spike. Now we're going to go and find out that this took place in Snohomish County, in the town of Edmonds. Here's the address where the store was. Here is, sorry, what is this? This is the transaction ID, right? So this is a million-row data set with each transaction as a separate line. So we've come down from 3 months down to 1 row out of a million. We've followed this trail down. And then I can go further, if I can get this line, and we find out that it is 40,000 cases of, or 40,000 six-packs of Miller Genuine Draft. Right? So someone was having a huge party on August 11th. Or, wait, 3629, do you guys remember, was that the number? The transaction ID? 3629, okay. So now I'm going to come back up and I'm going to filter out this transaction because in fact, it's not someone having a huge party, it's a data entry error. So I'll come here, go back to report, and then down on the filter section, I'm going to filter out 3629. So we get to is not 3629, apply filter, and so now I've taken it out, right? I've taken out that one transaction, and now we're looking at more normalized data. And we're looking at true data. So now we get a true representation of what happened across these 3 months. And here's what I see. One, that August is now much closer to October than it had been. Two, that my Tuesday spike is completely gone. Right? Tuesday is not the second biggest day. Three, the 12 o'clock spike is also gone. So people are not rushing out at lunch to buy beer. And four, the metro area looks exactly the same as every other area. So the ability to get down to 1 out of 1 million rows, identify what that row is and remove it, is kind of an analyst's dream, right? To be able to do it that quickly and then get a true picture of your data. So this exercise has demonstrated that properly constructing the data model allows us to identify anomalies and figure out what they are and remove them if necessary. But two, this taking it out also shows how badly distorted our interpretations of events can be with bad data, right? I mean, my theory about Tuesday was totally wrong. My theory about lunchtime was totally wrong, and my theory about the metro area was totally wrong because of one bad data entry error. It completely shifted the type of analysis I was coming up with. And now we get a much truer picture of what had happened. We could also go in, drill in, and figure out what happened in October, in that last week of October. And again, see if we really had this big drop in sales, or more likely there's some other cause. But it's because the data model is constructed in such a way that we're easily able to drill down and see that. So I spent a lot of time creating dimension tables and building a lot of custom dimensions, because I believe that the ability to create paths comes from dimensions, and paths through data lead to truths about data. And if you built your data model correctly, you get to those fundamental truths, and then you can communicate them. Then you can drive effect. Yes? Right.
Is there a way for you to do that? I haven't been able to do that.
You mean to get a particular order in your taxonomies?
No, to be able to tie a specific view to something like this month without having to either change a slicer or change my folder.
Yeah. So there are DAX formulas you can write to do that. Yes. Someone was going to.
The ability you point out is really great, like we have more than two things you want to filter out.
Right. Yeah, if a million rows, you have to be very specific. But that's a good point. It absolutely is. Someone had a comment?
No, I if you're not using DAX, whatever
Yeah. You do it in M? Yeah. So there are a variety of approaches, and these guys I can tell are already more technologically advanced than me. I would figure out a low-tech approach to it. But there are a lot of approaches, and DAX is something that I really focus on learning as much as I can about. Other questions? Yes? It depends. So in Microsoft Finance, we talk about, sorry? Yeah, the question is, do I always build my own dimension tables? Yes, yeah, that's absolutely true. So the question is, date filtering can be problematic. I agree, it can be. I think I'm not sure whether it's because I don't understand it very well, or it's a problem right now that we're still working through from a technology perspective. But a lot of times I'll create my own custom hierarchies, and if I have very disparate data sets, I create a month key or a day key, which is numeric. And substitute that for months. So right now I'm working through a customer's data set where they have data from 4 or 5 different data sources, and it's all monthly data, but it's different formats that they're using for the month, and it's just a pain in the ass. So when I'm taking the original data set, I'll just do an offset match formula to put in the month key that I have. I do that a lot. Yes? Okay. So yeah, maybe I can just demonstrate that table. All right, so the period table is months, transaction day, weekend date, week number. I create all these myself, and I do this for all kinds of dimensions. This is for one-offs. So this example is taking customer data and adapting it so I can drill through it. For Microsoft standardized data, for our master data sources, these tables already exist. And so those we shouldn't screw around with. Any other questions? Okay. This brings up quite an interesting point, though, about when you should kind of freestyle and when you shouldn't, when you're creating a dashboard. So we talk about discipline at the core and flexibility at the edge. Let me bring up that graph or that slide. So I use this a lot when presenting to customers. Discipline at the core means that we have a single master data source for as much of our data as possible. So for established businesses, we understand very clearly what is the data source, what are the measures or definitions that apply to it, and how it should be used. John referred to the fact that when we were talking about monthly active users, it differed from business to business. This is because some businesses are newly forming, they're trying to figure out that metric and how it applies to them. For others, it's been locked. So as much as possible, we want to rely on the single master data source with fixed definitions and consistent taxonomies to produce corporate standard reports. So 80% of our reporting, we wish to be standard reporting with standard dashboards. But we also want flexibility at the edge. And this means, how do we, for say the 20% of the time when we don't have a report that covers what we need, how do we make good data, standardized data, curated data, available to analysts who can then extract it and perhaps join it to different data sources, right? So let's say monthly active users for Power BI compared with Twitter sentiment about Power BI. We can join those two data sources. One is very well curated and managed by IT. The other we're pulling down off the internet, off of Twitter. And so we try and maintain an awareness of which is say, gold standard data and which is bronze standard data. So publicly available Twitter data may be bronze standard. Gold standard data is what we have in our single master data source. When we're talking about analytics that we've done based on that data, we will be very clear to say, this data set comes from our single master data source, and we can make decisions with a lot of confidence based on this data. For data that comes from bronze standard data, we should be aware that there could be a 20 to 30% kind of variance of quality, and we need to be cautious in making business decisions while using this type of data. So this is the approach that we take more and more widely, but it's been a matter of education for us. Okay. So I'm free to take questions, or if you have questions for Christian, John, or Serena, we're happy to take those right now. I'd just like to say that you know, John in particular is the guy I'm extremely impressed with. He really was making the dashboards for Satya Nadella and for his LT. He's worth grabbing after to speak with about his experiences if you're looking at that same type of very high C-level production. Yes? Right, yep. That is, the question is, can partners submit, how do partners get up on our site? So here's the main Power BI site. Partner showcase is right here. And then partners submit examples of work they've done. You can click into it and learn more, and then we've embedded the analytics right here, and these are fully interactive. So then this is used as a showcase for the capabilities of the partners, meant for customers to come and contact them. Yes? You cannot do that. So because that's IP, essentially. So we're not trying to give away IP. Yep.
Is publishing on a web page still where it's completely open and you can't lock it down? I mean, that's how it was when it's first, like if I want to publish to HTML or a website.
Right.
It gives you a warning that this data is going to be out in the public and can be referenced by anybody on the site.
So if it's a public site, I think that's still the case, right? Yes. If it's an internal site or a site to which you restrict access, then to some degree you're protected.
But you can't publish to, you
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you have the security of your internal site, but the URL is still public. So if someone would only have the URL, you could still access the. It's still open, yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it will be different in the future, but for now it's still open.
Yeah, Christian was just raising the point, we don't know if that's a feature that's coming or not, if it's in the roadmap or not. It is, I'm sorry, it is in the roadmap.
Is it going to be aligned with the announcement they made yesterday with the access level control?
Yes, right.
Well, that will be first. It's not. It won't be updated at the same time. But,
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate your coming.